Bloomberg's latest report suggests that Sam Altman is looking to build a network of AI chip manufacturing facilities around the world and is trying to raise billions of dollars to do so. Welcome back to the AI Breakdown. When Sam Altman was unceremoniously dethroned from OpenAI last year, which of course led to him later coming back, one of the complaints from the OpenAI board was that he was spending too much time focused on things that weren't related to OpenAI. Now, there had been reports that Altman was currently out fundraising for some chip-related endeavor, although there really wasn't that much information at the time. It also wasn't clear to what extent the OpenAI board was concerned with Altman undertaking those activities, or just his lack of transparency with the board around them. In any case, subsequent to his rehiring as OpenAI CEO, he has gone to pains to say that OpenAI is what he is focused on, and that his involvement in all these other efforts, or at least how disconnected from OpenAI they are, has been greatly overstated. And so that's the context for the latest report that we got from Bloomberg around a continued push, apparently, from Altman to raise billions of dollars to build a network of AI chip factories. So here are the details from this latest reporting. This is effectively the same story that we got last year, but with a few updated details. Bloomberg writes, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, who has been working to raise billions of dollars from global investors for a chip venture, aims to use the funds to set up a network of factories to manufacture semiconductors. Altman has had conversations with several large potential investors in the hope of raising the vast sums needed for chip fabrication plants, or fabs, as they're known colloquially, according to several people with knowledge of the plans. So, what are the things that are new here? Well, one of them is what this chip venture actually is. It is notable and new that Altman appears to be interested in setting up this large network of chip fabrication plants. Second, it appears that we're starting to get some more details about who Altman is actually talking with, although the players are not necessarily unpredictable. SoftBank Group is one of them, who Sam has also been rumored to have conversations about a potential hardware venture with Johnny Ive. But then there's also the Abu Dhabi-based G42, which is a much more controversial partner. Now, OpenAI and G42 did announce a partnership last October, although once again, the details of that exactly were a little circumspect. But G42 has been at the very epicenter of the US-China tension when it comes to artificial intelligence, with a number of high-profile reports coming out over the last couple months around the pressure being put on G42, and how even though the company has started to try to untangle itself from its China relationships, some US political leaders still think that relationship is much too cozy. Now, beyond just the details of what Sam is trying to do, what it reflects is also really interesting. Again, from Bloomberg, their sources suggest that, quote, Altman's fundraising push reflects his concern that as AI becomes more pervasive, there won't be enough chips for widespread deployment. Now, you might remember last week when we were talking about Sam Altman's comments at Davos at the World Economic Forum, that when asked about artificial intelligence's impact on climate change, Altman basically said that it was going to force us to reach an energy breakthrough, that the world would simply not be able to reach or meet the demand for intelligence coming down the pipeline without massively increasing its capacity to create and harness energy. This is why he spent so much of his own money investing in nuclear companies. And with this latest reporting from Bloomberg, you're starting to see a pretty clear picture emerge of his view of the world. TLDR, in order for AI to become what it needs to become and what it wants to become, we just simply need more chips. Now, one of the other things that's new about this Bloomberg reporting is that it suggests that OpenAI, or at least Sam Altman himself, are taking a very different approach than some of the other big tech companies that are also trying to deal with their own chips. They write, building and maintaining fabs that manufacture semiconductors is far more expensive than the approach favored by many of OpenAI's AI industry peers. Amazon, Alphabet, Google, and Microsoft typically focus on designing their own custom silicon and then farm out manufacturing to outside companies. The article points out that a single fabrication plant can cost tens of billions of dollars to construct, and so any sort of vision for a network of those facilities would take years to actually come to fruition. According to Bloomberg sources, quote, Altman believes the industry needs to act now to ensure there's sufficient supply near the end of the decade. Now, many have wondered, is this going to be something completely new, or is Altman looking to partner with existing chip manufacturers? There's not necessarily a huge additional amount of information here. Once again, Bloomberg writes, Intel, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Co., better known as TSMC, and Samsung Electronics lead the chip fabrication market and are potential partners for OpenAI. However, basically every firm mentioned in this article, from OpenAI to investment partners to chip fabrication partners, all declined to comment. Now, despite it being less than a month into 2024, it's clear just how much chips are going to be at the center of the AI discussion. Remember last week, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg was telling reporters, as well as all of us via Reels, that by the end of the year, Meta will own not only 340,000 NVIDIA H100s, but the equivalent power of around 600,000, or around $20 billion worth of compute. The FT appears to have added some details about who Altman is talking with when it comes to this venture. Writes the Financial Times, Sam Altman is in discussion with Middle Eastern investors and chip fabricators about launching a new chip venture. Altman has spoken to some of the wealthiest investors in the region about funding the ambitious new product to develop chips required to train and build AI models. The 38-year-old entrepreneur is in talks with investors in the United Arab Emirates, including Sheikh Tahnoon bin Zayed Al Nahyan, one of Abu Dhabi's wealthiest and most influential figures. FT also reports that Altman is talking about a partnership with TSMC to actually fabricate the chips. Now, the FT writes, it is not clear whether Altman's chip venture will be managed as a subsidiary of OpenAI or as a separate entity. According to two people with knowledge of the plans, OpenAI will be the new company's primary customer. So let's talk about community reactions. Effective accelerationist Beth Bezos writes, okay, this is unfathomably based if true. Sam Altman actually making an American TSMC? This is the best news I've heard in years. America is so effing back. Ali K. Miller writes, I posted about OpenAI chips 3 months ago. Interesting if it's a separate venture that Sam Altman also runs. Maybe to make it easier to use chips from NVIDIA or Rain, or to keep Microsoft partnership clean, or the battle of research versus commercial inside OpenAI. We shall see. Now, once this report came out, more pieces of the story started to trickle in. Ed Ludlow from Bloomberg tweets, News. Sam Altman is meeting with Samsung Electronics chips exec this week, including co-CEO Kyung Kye-hoon. Report states the discussion may include supply of AI, memory chips, AI chip design capability, and investment in AI chip production. So basically, we're starting to get a picture of the set of investors that are being courted, as well as the set of potential production partners. Now, an interesting market point came from Pierre Ferragu, who wrote, one may think OpenAI's Altman seeking fund for a chip startup is bad news for NVIDIA. Bad read, folks, it is the opposite. It means OpenAI has zero confidence in alternatives to NVIDIA, and in particular, Microsoft's in-house chips. It is a positive. More generally, the fact that everyone tries to develop their in-house chips is healthy for NVIDIA. Even Google, the only team to have ramped a chip at huge scale, having worked on it for over 12 years and 5 generations, needs NVIDIA at a huge scale. So far, more than 10 years down the line, only Google and Tesla have been able to roll out in-house alternatives to NVIDIA. Few will have the ability to do so. Don't assume everybody will succeed the same way. Doing one's own chip is an incredibly hard problem. Now, one thing I will say on this point is that my strong sense, based on everything I've seen from Altman, is that this is not an anti-NVIDIA move. Instead, to the extent that this comes to fruition, it's a move predicated on the idea that the world simply cannot make enough compute fast enough to keep up with the demand that's going to be there. In other words, I think that even if he does pursue this, he would view it as nothing but a good thing if NVIDIA could quintuple its capacity over the next few years. My First Million podcast host Sean Purry writes, Sam Altman is on his Elon arc. Loop equals zip 2. A small win, get cash, ultimately forgotten. YC president equals PayPal. Make a few $100 million scaling someone else's idea to a household name. OpenAI equals SpaceX. Moonshot hard tech that nobody else dared to try. New AI chip co equals Tesla. Build a manufacturing juggernaut in the US. Plus, both got fired in an internal coup. Elon surprise fired as PayPal CEO by Peter Thiel, Sam at OpenAI by Ilya before ultimately mending the relationships. Anna on Twitter writes, Sam Altman and a few other Anons are low-key carrying America right now. Now, putting a point on how important this issue of compute really is, The Information also published an article today called Anthropic's Gross Margin Flags Long-Term AI Profit Questions. The crux of the article is this paragraph. New data shows that profit margins for such startups may end up lower than for existing enterprise software firms. After paying the cost of customer support and servers to power its AI, Anthropic's gross margin, gross profit as a percentage of revenue, was between 50 and 55% in December. That's far lower than the average gross margin of 77% for cloud software stocks, according to Meritech Capital. And it may not improve much over time. At least one major Anthropic shareholder expects the company's long-term gross margin to be around 60%. Now, some people tried to make a big hay out of this. Gary Marcus, for example, wrote, Gen AI has a serious margin problem that is not being factored into sky-high valuations. Although I kind of resonate with commenter Mini Baytech, who writes, isn't this kind of sorry to say but pathetic? Gen AI is set to get rid of, for example, 1 million deaths in car accidents per year, and you're talking about only 50% profit margins. Now, while I think that that is a very reasonable point, it still is notable just how expensive it is to run an AI company. And you have to think that that's part of the motivation going into things like Altman's efforts. Overall, I think we are going to hear a lot more about this, and it is hugely reflective of just how significant this chip war, which is not necessarily a war between companies, but just a war for how much we can produce compute and how fast is going to play out. For now, however, that's going to do it for today's AI Breakdown. Appreciate you listening or watching, and until next time, peace